my first time using this platform, so I apologize. I cannot see attendees. But if you have any questions throughout this process, put them in the chat. We will be able to see that. And we're excited to get started. So this is Scott Nelson with Swift Medical. We will be partnering with them as one of our key products and partners this year. And so we wanted to make an introduction, give you guys an overview of the system and platform and how it works. And Scott, I will let you introduce yourself and we'll go ahead and begin.
Awesome. Thanks, Bailey. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. It is a Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock, at least on the East Coast. Now you guys are kind of scattered all over. So I definitely appreciate the time for you guys taking it out of your territories and accounts and spending some time with us. So my name is Scott Nelson. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Swift Medical. And we're going to walk through what we are. We're a digital imaging company within wound, but a bit more than just take a picture and do a measurement. So really, I'm excited to kind of talk to you guys and really layer in how it's incredibly complementary to your current portfolio and what gaps it can provide both to you as well as your accounts. I think we're all navigating the new waters of 2026 and kind of adjusting to what's real, what's perceived, what's further to change. And this is something that I think is going to provide some unknown benefit to your accounts because it's kind of a new and emerging area. So wound images have been around for a while, but within the provider space and the mobile space, HOPD is still relatively new. And so with Swift, we're not just a wound measurement. So really, it's an enterprise wound management solution. So it's digital image capture, a lot of AI, but one of the more important things as we walk through is really the enhanced documentation. So doing a very quick couple of minute patient assessment is going to get a couple of images. We're going to really, we'll talk about the accuracy, but really you're going to get a very comprehensive chart note that your accounts are going to create simply by using it, which, let's kind of think about the world we're in. Right, if I'm applying a skin sub or an advanced dressing, if it's a topical dressing, if I'm doing a hydrogel, if I'm doing collagen, right now I'm really very accurately creating the chart note, which is going to justify what I'm doing. Now we're talking about audit protection. So now I've really built a story that defends why I've made the decisions clinically. We're not a diagnostic and we're not driving into that space, but we're going to walk through really a tool that I think is going to be incredibly complementary to the portfolio there. Adventure and really kind of address some unmet needs that the market is just now really realizing.
All right. So Alyssa said we should be all set. I don't see the presentation yet on that content button. Okay. So I think you can go ahead and share your screen and present if that works for you.
Yeah, let me just put it back in presentation mode.
All right. And then I'm going to remove myself from the stage so you won't see me, but I am still here.
No worries. And are you seeing what you need to see, Bailey?
Yep, I can see.
Okay, I'm assuming we're going. Okay. So Swift, right? Heal faster with the power of AI. So again, knowing that we're an AI, we're a digital first company. So think of Swift as we're a B2B SaaS company, software as a service. We're going to walk through really what that means. What you're seeing on the screen is the hardware component. So while we're a software company, we do have a hardware component, and that slides over the phone, and that's going to introduce spectral imaging. So now we're talking about thermal, we're talking about fluorescence. So who is Swift? Some people are familiar with us. We're a new company in this space. We're not a new company. So Swift was founded in 2015, began commercializing around 2017, but in the post-acute. So we're very deep and we've grown well and kind of grown up in that post-acute space. So long-term care, home health, and SNF. So we're in over 5,200 facilities with 275,000 monthly patients that we analyze on a monthly basis. When we talk about AI, our system utilizes artificial intelligence and we've trained it. And we've trained it on over 32. We're at 34 million images to date that have been clinically validated. So when we go through things and we get into it and we say, hey, when we determine what the depth is, or when we analyze and we're telling somebody what the percent of SR inside of a wound is, it's not that we're doing an RGB or red, green, blue analysis. We've trained it. We've told it 34 million times what SR looks like. And so now go look at this wound and kind of determine and assess. So it's a really strong built AI engine that is providing some of these clinical, innovations. So clinically validated. We're in over 28 peer-reviewed journals and growing, 46 scientific posters. We've got 2 more coming out of camps in March. We've got 6 coming out of SAWC Spring in April, and we're continuing to kind of increase that pace. And it's an area that we're always looking for partnerships and continue to do more of the research. Partner with top providers and EMRs. as you're talking to your accounts, there are a lot of EMRs or EHRs. I use them interchangeably. We don't integrate with all of them. We probably never will. There's hundreds and there's new ones all the time. But we partner with some of the larger ones in the post-acute space, PCC, point click care, home care, home base, more in the wound care space, IntelliCure, Advanced MD. We're fully integrated, and we're building a continued list that we're bringing on kind of a quarterly basis that we're looking across the markets that we serve and what integrations that we're going to continue to bring in. And then award-winning technology. Every year we kind of grow the cadence of recognition. So Ignite Healthcare, Fierce Healthcare. Last year in Fierce, we were the only wound care company represented in digital health that we won the award for. So we're really on the leading edge of technology and really pushing into new ways. And that recognition kind of comes from multiple sources. So what is Swift? So we're kind of a portfolio of products, and we use the word Swift as the company name, kind of where this is going to mean. So Swift Skin and Wound is the software. And that's the core of the product. That's really the heart and soul of what we're going to be talking about. And Swift Ray is the hardware component. That's going to introduce the spectral imaging. Now we're talking when we get into thermal and we get into fluorescence. Swift Ray doesn't work without the software, but the software can work without. So if we're in a software-only environment, then we're doing everything, but you're not going to get that spectral, that advanced imaging. Now the Swift portal, that's, we talked about the 34 million images. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of data. So if I'm in a multiple provider group or even a single provider group, they're using our system and they're capturing images of multiple patients on a daily and a weekly basis. And really the portal is what gives them the opportunity to see all of that data. So that's one of the things that sets Swift apart is we capture a lot of data, but we really make it very easy for the accounts to use it. If it is a multiple provider mobile group and I've got 5 providers, maybe in 2 different states, covering 7 different facilities, as the practice administrator through the portal, I can really quickly look and I can see how are all the patients going, which ones are healed, which ones are stalled. I can go by location. I can begin to see different trends or different treatment modalities affecting my patient population differently. So we really make it very easy for them to see those things in one location. And then Swift Academy, that's our online training. So we've got a very robust online training module that we've got, and we're in 2 different instances. One's going to be for the accounts, for the providers, and also we have a version of this for distribution partners such as yourself. So really, we've got on-demand training. This is in your instance for the sales perspective. This is where we house all of our marketing collateral, all of our competitive objection handling pieces. We've got a pitch deck that you are able to use when you're presenting to your accounts. We've got demonstration videos. It's a learning module. You can get in, kind of watch through a guided learning environment, answer a couple of questions. So kind of your typical learning module system. And then we've got a demonstration we call a Figma that it's a simple URL, but when you launch it, it makes your phone look like you're running the software. So you don't need to go download and do it, but you're actually running the software in a controlled environment where it kind of guides you through giving a demonstration. So, from a partnership perspective, we're going to walk before we run. It's not just go download the app from the App Store and take off and running. So we kind of want to be there with you and doing demos for your accounts, but we're really giving you the tools to start having some really engaging conversations. And one of the things that we share with you all is always a scheduling link. So as you're having conversations with your accounts, or like, hey, I'd love to see a demo, we're not going to throw you on your own, right? Hit a scheduling link. You just see our calendars across the board, pick a date and a time that works for everybody, book it, shows up, we show up, do the demo, you're there with them. So skin and wound, let's kind of dive into it. This is the software component. So it's going to give a couple of things. We talk about precise wound measurement. Precision and accuracy are something we are incredibly, tight with. It's very important to us, and it's a critical component of the product. So we talk about 95% measurement accuracy. I come from the biologics world prior to my time at Swift, and I was printing thousands of paper rulers on a monthly basis for our customer account. And there are studies that show clinicians using a paper ruler, maybe laying it across, maybe it's curved, maybe it's not. Is it in contact with the wound? Is it slightly raised at an angle? Now I'm taking a picture with my iPhone. How's the lighting? Where's it going? There's about a 40% accuracy rating. So in a controlled study where we want to control our software to a human doing a very controlled measurement, we're at 95% accuracy, and there's some subjectivity of humans that get in there. But across intra-operator variability, so how consistent are they using our system across different operators, different locations? We're 99%, greater than a 99% consistency rating. So we're very accurate, we're very consistent. So back into that mobile provider, multiple providers, multiple patients, multiple locations, we're really allowing them to raise that bar where their data becomes incredibly consistent and reproducible. Consistent image capture. The image you're seeing is that top left above the wound, that little white dot, or the white circle with a blue dot in the middle. So that is our registrant. That's an FDA registrant. We call it Helix. So that's a single-use item. It's a sticker. Every device comes with a pack of stickers, and then customers can reorder them. They're just a couple of cents. So it's a sticker that goes on there, and that's what we use to color calibrate, as well as the size and the distance. So it just needs to be next to the wound. You don't want it too close over the peri-wound edge, and it just needs to be visible by the camera, so in the area of the wound. And the system will go through a demo here in a couple of minutes. The system will auto detect everything. Turns green if they see it. Super easy to use. And then standardized documentation. What you're going to see in the demo is, by using the system, we're walking through a very comprehensive yet very simple and fast wound assessment. So it's not just, again, take a picture and get the measurement. It's walking through and you're building, is the wound infected? Are there appearances of infection? What's my granulation and eschar level? What is their slough? So very simple questions. We have preloaded commentary in there. So all the provider needs to do is check a button, check the radio box, and we're building an incredibly comprehensive list of notes. So the Swift Ray, that's the hardware, and you kind of see it, the image to the bottom where it slides over the top of the phone. This is going to take you from a standard light image. Now I'm getting thermal and I'm getting fluorescence. You can kind of see. I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. These are the advanced imaging modalities. The next slide has a little bit more in-depth images. So when we talk about thermal, this is going to be very typical thermal imaging. If you see the gradient from the blues to the colds to the warms, the blues to the red, the more red there is, the more heat there is. So we're really, assessing from a thermal impact. Now we're beginning for the clinician looking at potential infection, but really we're looking for inflammation. So they could be using these as a precursor to, are we seeing a pressure injury potentially detecting? Are we seeing, an infection because of the heat elevation raised? On the right side of the screen, the bacterial imaging. So am I seeing an abundance of bacterial imaging? We are not a diagnostic, so we're not telling you, hey, this is the type of bacteria and the amount that we're seeing. What we're informing the clinician of is there is an amount of bacteria-like content, and here's where it is in the location that you should go look at. This is not unique to Swift. This is called non-contact fluorescence, and any device that is doing this type of analysis, we all operate the same. So really, we're just making it very easy for the physician, and we can get into what this does in the chart notes. And then later in this presentation, we'll talk about what the reimbursement potential of this looks like, just from an additive component of the overall system. And then the Swift portal. Here's kind of a quick overview of the dashboard. So I've got a compliance dashboard. I can kind of look and quickly see which wounds maybe have not been assessed yet. So it's kind of, from a practice administrator, they're quick to do. I can sort 24 hours, what's left to do. I can look over 30 days. I can get in there and do a more in-depth view outside of a compliance, and I can look at my location, what patients have been assessed, what are the trends that I'm seeing. So it really is a chance for them to get in here. Here's where I can build a patient-specific report and extract the images, and I can look at the concurrent, wound 1 to wound 2 to wound 3, kind of see the reduction, do an export to export the patient report and get a printout, share it with them, import it into their chart notes. So this is really kind of where they can get the master setting and really looking at all the data.
So Scott, I've got a couple questions in the chat on the portal. I figure we could cover them while we're here.
Yeah, no worries. I see something, but I can't really see the question. I have a very narrow sliver of information.
Yeah, if you click the little X up at the top, it should show you all the questions here. But the one that I'm seeing first on the portal was, would each provider have their own page within the portal so that a multi-provider group can differentiate between each provider?
The providers would be users within. So I'm just, I've got another little pop-up. There we go. I couldn't see the X. I had to a crown in. Okay. So when, this is a user-based system. So for example, if I am account XYZ and I've got 14 users, each provider would be a user. So the user is not necessarily going to have their page. It depends on the permissions at the provider, how they're set up. So it's kind of a use-based scenario. If all of them are admin, then they'd all be able to get in and see everybody. If it's set up as a parent admin, then they would see everybody and the user would just be able to see theirs. So it kind of depends on how the facility sets it up.
Got it. Do you see his next question? So when they say they're building a comprehensive list of notes, do you mean the AI program will suggest language for SOAP notes, or are you suggesting it will be easier to build a comprehensive SOAP note?
So it will be easier. We are not, and we'll walk through the demo. So from a SOAP note perspective, remember we, as a company, so we grew up through, CW wound nurses in a variety of post-acute settings. So there's a couple of freeform entries, you can type things, and the AI is not building this. These are pre-built templates, and we've got a couple of different template options. We don't want to get custom because then that becomes big delay. There's expenses, but we've got about 4 or 5 different templates that are really geared toward nursing. It's all about nursing workflow. So the template for a provider, for example, then as they walk through, it's not AI prompting them. It's, did the patient have signs of infection? If I click yes, then 5 new options show up. Now I'm really plugging in, was there odor, were there things? So it's really pre-built around their workflow nursing to build the SOAP notes, but it's all based on wound nurse typical workflow. The AI is going to be, and we'll get in, right? So the identification of the perimeter of the wound, that's AI. The auto depth, identifying where the depth is, that's AI. When we start talking about automatically identifying what percent of Eschar slough, that is AI. AI is not used in any of the noting. That is a pre-built template. So it's going to be that consistency. There's no change in the template from patient A to patient B or location, X, Y, Z. So that way those chart notes are going to be incredibly consistent.
Okay, makes sense.
And all right. Michelle, does the non-contact fluorescence, let me read this twice, make sure I'm understanding. For everybody else that can't see, so you mentioned saying Eschar. Does the non-contact fluorescence, Eschar, and suspected bacteria the same, or how does that look? So the non-contact fluorescence, what you're going to see, and we'll do a live demo, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. It's simulated, right? I've got a fluorescent highlighter that I mark on my wound demo, but it is simply going to be highlighting bacteria will fluoresce under controlled circumstances, and so the Swift ray emits you won't see it, right, but a green and a violet LED that's built into it. So even though it slides over the camera on the phone, it has a camera embedded. And so that camera is the spectral imaging camera. So we're emitting controlled frequencies of LEDs, and then that's going to bounce back to that spectral camera. Bacteria will fluoresce if it has sufficient quantity, technically 10 to the 4, and that's not a Swift thing. That's just kind of an open literature search of bacteria. So when bacteria is in enough of a volume, it will fluoresce under normal circumstances. And so what we are, as other companies like us, right, we're operating the same in this instance. So we're capturing that amount that's fluorescing. Again, we're not a diagnostic. So I'm not telling you exactly what level or what type of bacteria or the quantitative analysis. I'm not touching the wound. This is not a PCR. But what I'm telling you is, here's an area that is going to, it's going to be like a cyan or a pink or a blue, and those colors correlate to different types of common bacteria. But really what we're doing is we're highlighting to the physician, here's a quick test, and we're telling you, here's an area you might want to go look, right? You're going to be the one making that diagnostic determination, because this is a procedural code, not a diagnosis code. So, that, may or not, and then SR is going to be different. So we're looking at that under that RGB, that bright field, because when we do the demo, you'll see we take about 4 images in 3 seconds, and we're taking them differently. And so that SR, the granulation, the slough, that's based off the bright field image. So kind of that RGB image of the wound. And we'll show you again, we're not the diagnostics. So we bring it up for the clinician in our slider bar. So if they're like, no, I don't think it's 20%, I think it was 10%, just slide it over. So we're just kind of prompting you with, here's kind of what we think. You're making the ultimate call. We're just trying to make it very easy for you. It's not another area of drop down and type and do all this stuff. It's just really kind of prompting them in a very kind of quick and easy workflow.
Sounds good. I think let's move to the demo, and then if we've got more questions that may get answered through that, they can come up. We can hear them at the end.
I will stop sharing. I'm going to share a different screen.
Okay.
Learning your system. So all the buttons are in different locations. So it's not difficult, it's just different. Okay, so what you're seeing is my phone running the skin and wound software. This is in a, it's production. So this is real software, but it's running a test environment. So we're kind of seeing made up patients. So, if we were fully integrated with an EHR, then their patients would push in. If we're doing, what we call an ADT, so kind of a semi-automatic where, they're doing exports. So if they're exporting from their EHR, they can import in, and you can always add a new patient, right? I can create the patient here. When we're first getting them loaded, we can do a bulk import. So lots of different solutions if we're non-integrated, just because there's tons of EHRs out there. And we've got a lot of different solutions. So I'm going to pick a patient real quick. Pick one I started earlier. So I can do a sort, again, you can kind of search by name and then find, okay, there's the one I'm looking for. This is going to pull up what prior images have been set. Okay, so I can see there were a couple. And for this instance, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a new one. I'm going to go ahead and take my Ray device. Takes a second to pair. Just save the battery every time you don't use it for a few minutes. It just turns itself off. So I know you're not seeing, so turn it on. I'm waiting for the light to flash. Then I'll get a registration that tells me it's synced. I can always, if I go back, if I go into the profile, you can scroll up. Oh, there's my array, right? Tells me what percent of my battery is left. So you can kind of verify that you're in there. So we're going to go back to in progress. Let me find my Scott patient again. Slide the Ray over, and we're off and running. So I'm going to go ahead down at the bottom, hit that plus. This is going to be a new assessment. So maybe it's the same patient, but I saw them last week, or I saw them 2 or 3 days ago. So it's been a couple of days. I want to do a new assessment. Maybe there's a new wound that I'm seeing. So the body map, I can see the front, I can see the back. So I just want to pick, and I'm just going to touch with my finger, tap on it. Where do I think? Okay, left medial foot. Do I want to specify left medial forefoot or midfoot? We're going to say there's a midfoot. So I hit continue. And it's going to ask if you want to do auto depth. It's an option. You can say, no, I want to manually plug it in, or no, because there really is no depth if this is really superficial. But no, this is a wound with depth. So I'll hit yes. System plugs in. I'm holding over. You can see that little green circle. It automatically identified the helix, the sticker. I didn't do anything, and everything's green. I'm just going to push the button. Hold still. Takes about 3 or 4 seconds. You'll see a flash. And that was the fluorescence. Then that, kind of like when you do the facial recognition. So you just want to rock it back and forth. I'm taking about 4 more images, and that's how we're going to assess the depth. So now this is the first layer of AI. AI is saying, okay, based on what I know and how smart I am, here are the edges of the wound. So here's the perimeter, the outer edges of the wound. If you like it, you can move on. If not, if there's an area, look at the buttons at the bottom of the screen, so refine, erase, and trace. So I'm going to erase because I'm going to say, no, I didn't really like that part. I don't want you to include it. Hit refine. Okay, I'll adjust without it. Wait, I really did, or I missed an area. Hit the trace. I don't have to be precise. I can just circle a big area, hit refine. I'm back to the outer edges again. That's how easy it is. So I'm going to hit next. Where's the head? This gets into the chart noting because when we do tunneling and undermining here in just a second, those are referenced by the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock reference based on the head, which is typical SOAP note process, right? So we're just saying, tell me where the head is, and that's why I need to know that. Now we're going to go through auto trace, or I'm sorry, the depth. So auto depth, that we're saying, okay, the yellow dot, that's what we're saying that's the deepest portion of the wound, 0.7 centimeters. You can change your mind. You can say, no, I want to manually do a probe, or we can accept that, and there's no issues there. Undermining and tunneling, the 2 bottom images, or the icons at the bottom. We can't see through the skin, but we're going to accommodate this. So I can just tap on undermining. I can say, okay, here I've got an area of undermining, 0.5. Hit done, great. We're going to mark it. Well, I've got some tunneling over here, 0.5. So we're just identifying very quickly and easily. So we're accounting for that. So as you're doing subsequent images, you can also see if these are adjusting as you're building the volume of the wound up and kind of filling these areas in. Thermal starts off. I didn't heat this up. Again, I've got a clay wound in a tin, so there's no blood flowing through it. But what you would do is pick a control point. So outside the wound, kind of tap an area. Now you're going to see some subtle inferences of where there is a thermal variation. So I can kind of touch and I can see what the delta is. You can hit up to 10 per image. And really what we're telling you, we're not telling you the temperature. We're telling you based on what you assess the control point or healthy tissue, where are we seeing from a thermal variation? Now there's the bacterial fluorescence. So again, this is a clay model in a tin. Use a little bit of a highlighter that can kind of simulate. So you're seeing, the blue. If this was an actual bacterial, you'd see some cyan, some pink in different areas that correlate to the different ones. So again, we're just saying, here's something that fluoresced, likely bacteria. You should take a look at it, and this is going to go in. That's it. You hit the final. This is kind of summing out. All right, here's the area of the wound. Here's the longest. Here's the width. There's your tunneling, undermining. We told you the depth. Hit done. And now we're going to get into the chart noting portion. So this is an 8.3 square centimeter wound. I've got length, width, depth, undermining, everything in there. There's my average temperature delta. Now, because this isn't a real wound, nothing really kind of falls within there. But this is where we're going to have that. It's the smart tissue. So it's identified as investigational use, fully functional, but we don't push this data into the chart yet because we are doing an additional 510K submission. So just, FDA felt this was moving over. So we're doing a 510K with them. As soon as that gets cleared, then this will simply auto-populate into the chart, but the data is valid. But again, as the clinician, if this came up at 20%, right? So I can just kind of change these radio buttons where I want to get what is the contents of the wound. And then you can see at the bottom, it's not going to let you get above 100%. So, you're not going to be able to just drag everything. So it kind of keeps you where you can just kind of check. Now, do we want to skip tissue typing or do tissue typing? I'm going to walk through relatively quickly when we hit the document icon or button. So now we're going to get into, okay, was wound care provided? Yes, I can freeform type. What'd you do? You can just kind of give a high level description, hit the body map. What was the wound type? We'll hit diabetic. Present on admission. Yes, that's, going to be typical. I can hit today's date just to pre-populate the date. We can start getting into characteristics. So this was, this is kind of the portion that will be, automated. We're just kind of waiting for 510K. But it gives them, it's the same again. This is going to be your very typical wound-driven SOAP note, perspective. We're not building this for them. This is just a template. So they're going to go through, just check the boxes. No SR was visible. Partial skin loss on the tissue depth. Evidence of infection. Now watch the screen as I hit yes. You're going to see different option pop up. So through this we build in some if-then logic. So yes, evidence of infection. Okay, what were the signs? Increasing drainage. I could pick more. Wound bed, we'll pick fiber and just kind of randomly picking some stuff. Exit amount was scant. We're going to get to this. I'm not going to assign this because I have to go back and do, some more, type the notes at the beginning. Odor, was there none? No odor. Periwound edge, indistinct. So you can kind of see the comprehensive nature, but it goes pretty quickly because I'm really just walking through it. I'm hitting this. Because I'm in a demo environment, you see the bottom left button says sign green. There would be a red button on the right in a true clinician environment that says save. So I can just save this, go back if I want to finish it later, and just kind of, because in the test environment for me in sales, they give me, the sales version, so I don't have that. So, if I were to exit now, I just wouldn't save all this. But, just to kind of, you guys are seeing the example of we're walking through, not a lot of time for me to spend on this, right? Pain, was there pain associated? Props up another one, right? Cognitive impairment. So again, we're building that comprehensive note. I'm asking you questions and you're just checking boxes. And then there are a couple, you saw the note up top, when I treat the wound, there's notes at the bottom. Sometimes you may have them, like if you're, working through them on the formulary, what products that they're ordering through you, they can then say, okay, what skin sub did I apply? What topical appointment was, so that gives them the option when they're looking later to start really kind of getting trends. So I can start seeing what products I use if I see different, aspects of my patients. So it just gives them more information very, very quickly. Again, I'm not going to save this. I can sign. It tells me all the things I didn't do, but we'll exit out. So that was the product demo. That's skin and wound. Let's see, question.
Yeah, so somebody asked, once you go through these check marks, what does it look like after you sign? Does it just show those checks or does it put it into a note format? Do you have an example of what you can export out?
Yes, I am going to pull up our portal. Okay, so here's kind of the back end portal of what it would look like. And so, yes, they would, you can see different notes on the phone. The phone that I am using for a test is a very small one. So, I tend to try and work off the dashboard a little bit more. And I know there was also, I think while there was a question on the Ray hardware compatibility, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I'm still seeing your screen with the test, the clinical documentation. Are you still trying to share on your phone?
Oh, I shared the app, not the screen. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd just drag this in front of the other one. Okay. So quick question on the compatibility. So the software is compatible with any iOS, Android, Google, it doesn't matter. The hardware does have, so the Ray, the spectral imaging does have a limitation. We've got, and I can make sure it gets updated, and I believe it's on the sales portal But it does have a limitation of based on phone location. I was going to hold my phone up like you guys can see me. I think you can't see. But we do have a current limitation of, I think there's about 5 or 6 versions of iPhone. The iPhone 16 is the newest one. It's going to be limited to a singular camera. So those with the one camera location. So there's a certain number of iPads and there are a certain number of iPhones. There is no Android compatibility at this point. This is Ray Gen 1. We will be introducing Ray Gen 2 end of this year, beginning of next year, and that's going to move us to a hardware, truly hardware agnostic, hardware approach as well. So currently there is a hardware limitation just for the Ray because of the camera alignment. Every phone has a different camera configuration, so it's just kind of chasing that. We do have a couple of solutions. So we have a MDM, or a mobile device management program. So if you've got accounts that they just don't want to deal with it, we can configure and ship them an iPhone. We're defaulting to iPhone 16e. It runs better, faster, it's a little bit newer. There's like a small fee. If they wanted to source their own, they could do that. So, we can absolutely take care of that and provide the gap, and then we can provide the compatibility device issue. Just so you guys know, it's not been an objection that has, kind of moved us out of an account. So it's nothing that has stopped us from moving forward any accounts to date, but it definitely is a conversation that comes up. I'm going to move into the demo on the dashboard we're looking at right now. So this is the compliance dashboard. Again, this is kind of in a test environment, so a lot of random stuff that's in here. What the compliance does is now I can look and see kind of what are the patients that are in progress. So I can look over 30 days, what is maybe somebody that just came, there's the one, right, within 24 hours. So let's pop in, and it's an incomplete patient because I didn't really, kind of finish it. But now I can start looking at, okay, what am I seeing within this patient? Is this, I could sign and close, so I can finish that here. I didn't have that capability on the phone because, I'm in that not fully really software in the sales compliance aspect that I'm using for the testing. But that's where they could go through the compliance dashboard and kind of see who's available. I can do a look back, 30 days. Is there anything that's done? So, within filters, clinicians, locations, and progress. So clinicians, obviously, if I've got multiple providers, I can, see, I just wanted to look at this person, kind of what's done, or if it's them, right? I can look at pull up, my patients that I need to finish. If I've got multiple locations, I can kind of just look if I want to focus on one location today. So it gives them a chance to kind of get in there and see what assessments need to be completed. I can do a master patient view, and now I can look at all the patients again by status, by location, and just kind of start saying, who I want to kind of pull in. I pick this one again. So this will be, these all have single wounds. So it'll pull this up. If I had subsequent images or subsequent scans, and I can build that, kind of that secondary, and I can look at the sequential scan image down, just the ones that I've done here. I think I just did the one. So yeah, there's no secondary. So that, but if I had done 3 scans of this instance, then I could see again that exact same wound, not the patient. This is the patient, but I did one scan of that wound. So if I did a subsequent scan of the same wound, that's where you're going to see it stack up, and you can get 3 or 4 across. So you're really looking at that sequential, if it's every week, if it's, every 2 weeks, if it's twice a week. So you're really, build that report. I scroll all the way to the bottom, then I've got an export PDF. So I can just export that PDF of all of them in sequential order. Survey, it's a little bit different for the provider. This was kind of built more in some of the hospital settings. So it kind of gives you a chance. So you're looking at, various admission status. But where you can really drill down here is now you can start looking at wound type. So that's the top part, not as much, but they can start looking at, okay, if I've got arterial, what were my VLUs versus DFUs? I can kind of expand them, and then I can see the patients that are within there. If I click on here, I can right click, I can show as a table. I can do a drill through and look at the wound details. Now I can see the patients that made up all that arterial. So it really gives me a chance to kind of, again, think of it, this is more that practice administrator. So I can really look at all the data, and then I can take a 30-day trend of all my wounds. I can look at just VLUs. Now I can really drill down into the individual patient, look at the images. Hey, Bailey, I see you popping up. Probably questions I'm missing?
Couple questions. Yep. And I actually really like this and how you can categorize it by the wound type, because that can also show them, okay, I've got all these patients with a DFU, different treatments that you may want to consider for them, see the progress for those patients specifically. So Mike did ask, can you select multiple pictures and export that to one document to share with the referring doctor to show progress?
You can. What I am not doing a good job of for you is picking the right test patient, because again, it's not that I'm picking all the wounds. So what I can't do, because I'm picking this report, is showing that concurrent wound. So I'm trying to find a wound that had multiple images, because what'll happen, and when I click on it, it pops up here, and then you would see an icon that says, hey, there were other images with the dates. You can click on it, pick the date. So then you can literally pick what order. Did I want them sequentially, or no, I really wanted to compare these two images side by side. This is where you would do that. Scroll down, and it's going to create a PDF of exactly everything you're looking. And then that could be an export. You could print, you could email, you could scan. So if you're wanting to share it with other clinicians, with other physicians, some of you all have relationships with your clinicians where, they're sharing it with you and you're having those conversations. Some physicians will share it with the patient. And so it gives them a chance to, again, for those patients, hey, you've been compliant, you've been doing your offloading, you're really doing, look at the impact, so I can quickly print this, show it to the patient, which is that care stick, right? You're doing the right thing. You're seeing healing. Let's keep doing that. And that in the patient sort is where that would be.
Mike tacked on to say this is an awesome feature to market and accounts services and show some of that progression and healing.
Good. Yeah. And then, finally, so this was, it kind of highlights, we started with compliance, right? What's left to do. Patients, you can really get into the detail. Survey was where I can sort it by kind of wound type. And if I get into the wounds, then really it's just kind of getting into more of the long-term trends. So, those that are deteriorating, improving, which ones are stalled. And this is based off, it's going to automatically be stalled because I've taken multiple images and I've not shown any reduction. So, kind of picking up, obviously these are not going to show reduction because the patient's never going to heal.
And then can you show us an example of a signed off on note where you did add some documentation on what that looks like?
That is a good question. I don't know if I have that in this location.
Okay, that's okay.
But I will get one for you. And yeah, I mean, it's not no PHI. What I'll do is we'll get one after this, just so we can keep this conversation fluid, and I'll email it to you, and we can put it in the portal, and you can actually absolutely share it with the team.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay. So I know this is quick. We're going through a lot. We walked through, a little bit of who Swift is. We really kind of walked through the product, looking at the time. We walked through the portal. Maybe we can get into, if we want to get into, kind of the sales portal, training resources, we can get into reimbursement, kind of what.
I would say let's get into reimbursement, because we'll make sure to present everything that's in the sales portal, make sure that they have those resources. I think while we have you and can ask questions on reimbursement, let's talk about what that looks like in the different MACs and codes.
Okay. So I can share that pro forma, or we can just speak to it, kind of what level of detail you want to get to.
I think the pro forma is really helpful if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you guys are looking at, it's a spreadsheet, right? So there's pre-built formulas, and kind of the logic was built in. And I know, Bailey and Matt have this. Just I always caveat, right? Now we're getting into, the feature benefit of the product. So the accuracy, the efficiency, the audit defense. And now we get into, obviously, kind of what the economics are. So the two CPT
This is pretty small. You might want to zoom in a little bit as we're looking.
All right.
Yeah, that looks better.
So there's two CPT codes, 0598T, 0599T. The T is temporary. These codes are about 3 years old. So in Medicare terms, they're infant codes that are brand new. So they always establish new codes as a T code. And what CMS is saying is if they're looking for two things, utilization and medical necessity. So as long as documentation from clinicians justifies the utilization or justifies the reimbursement, then they'll continue to use them. We are absolutely seeing increased utilization year over year. We're not going to see 2025 data for a while. Medicare, kind of lags a little bit. But I know that from 23 over 22, we saw an increase both in utilization and reimbursement, and 24 over 23. Obviously, Swift is new to this game. Moleculite, you may be familiar with, is a company that offers also non-contact fluorescent. Kent is just beginning to introduce that. So the utilization is just now growing because we're just seeing technology that enables it to begin seeing clinical adoption. So long story short, which is why you're seeing a couple of things. There is no NCD or national coverage determination. So Medicare said, hey, here's some codes. Let's see what you guys do with it. But we're going to leave it up to the MACs. So the MACs then assess that the MACs don't have LCDs or local coverage determinations. They're saying these, we've got to see medical necessity, but we do have fee schedules. So what you're seeing, and this is in the pro forma that your team has, is the links are the links to the MAC fee schedules. So this is not Scott making stuff up. This is me going to their website, pulling their fee schedules. This was in December. Like a couple of these, they've not updated them for 26 yet. So they have not populated their own tables. So, I'm not aware of any changes yet, but this is, as of a week and a half ago. But you're seeing a wide variation. Now, the 0598 is the code for the first wound. The 0599 is for each subsequent wound. Those are the terms. So if I've got a patient with 3 wounds, I'm going to bill 1 0598 and 2 0599. Now I can build them. There's really no cap set by Medicare. So what that means is this is, I come from the biologics world, the skin cell world prior to Swift. So, this is not that I need 28 days of conservative care. So this is something I can use earlier on as I'm treating the patient and the wound. And they're not saying I can only do it 4 times over 12 weeks, right? There's no cap. Now everyone does it 7 days a week. That might raise some flags, but if the workflow is I typically see my patients once a week and I image once a week, great. If I typically see my patients 2 or 3 times a week, you can image each time. Remember, I'm building that chart note. So when I'm using the system, I'm creating documentation to really help me make clinical decisions. So if every time I see them and I image, I've got thermal, I've got fluorescence. So do I see inflammation? Am I seeing signs of infection? Am I seeing potential pressure ulcer take place? Am I seeing buildup of bacterial fluorescence? So just because I'm taking an image doesn't mean I'm doing it just to scan, right? But I am building this. How's the patient developing over time? And yes, it does afford me the opportunity to reimburse, much less than the skin sub world, even at the new rates. But let's kind of talk about what that means. So what the model is, the blue cells are, you modify those just to kind of, come up with what we're looking at. So how many patients, so if this is a multi-provider group with 5, I could put in 5 providers and it just changes the math. So we'll keep it simple for now. We've got one ray, so 1 provider, and they see on average 15 patients a month, right? How many a week? And maybe they see more, and that's how many they would be imaging. So, what's their math and what's their patient flow? But if 15 patients per month, pretty conservative, pretty low. Now, this means 100% of the wounds are single wounds. They're always going to have at least 1 wound. And 40% of those patients have a second wound. They could do 3 wounds, 4 wounds. I'm just trying to keep the math a little bit simpler. And they're going to scan them twice a week. Maybe they see them twice a week is just kind of the typical average that they're going to look at. So I picked WPS. So I just kind of picked, they're in the mid-range, on the lower end of the mid-range, but fairly conservative. So I picked WPS for the math. So 60-25 for the first code, 35-48 for the second code, assuming 80%. Right, so we'll kind of factor that down, take the 20% patient copay out. So based on that patient volume, they're going to be billing $7,100 per month for the fluorescent codes. Surprisingly more than I would think when I'm looking at $60. Now Ray has a price of $1,500 per month. So we are, I mentioned early on, we're a software company. So think a little bit differently in the pricing. If I'm a Moleculite or a Kent or a Mimosa, and I'm not picking on them, but those are really the predominant companies that are out there. These are capital equipment or hardware companies, and they're going to be billing, charging anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000 per device to purchase it. And when you purchase it, you own it. So we're going to operate like a B2B SaaS company, a little bit different in the wound care space. And so I've got a upfront implementation fee, so about $2,500. And that's us building out our Azure system in the back end. So we use Azure for the database with Microsoft. We're on a Microsoft platform, but it's per account, not per user. It's a one-time fee. And then each device is $1,500 per month. So it's not tied to utilization. It's not an upfront capital writing a check for $300,000, which some accounts have had to do. And what that gives you then is a much, much lower entry point, exponentially cheaper. The reimbursement is the same regardless of what device you use, but we're really looking for that long-term lifetime customer utilization. So, we'll write a typical 1-year agreement just to kind of have the terms. But what happens if they drop the device, right? What happens if the device broke? If they've been using it for a while, kind of wears out, battery life exceeds. As long as you're a customer, we're going to put a new one in the mail. Really no questions asked. I mean, if we see, issue problematic, if the same person drops their device in coffee every third Tuesday at some point, we'll have a conversation. But especially, we typically I expect about 18 to 20 months is the lifespan. They'll last longer. After a year of use, just return the device if there's any issues. Our goal is to just be easy to use and simple for the customer. So I've got a lower price point, really asking less of them financially and economically. And then that ties into, it's not a reimbursement conversation, but the pricing, right, gets into I'm a monthly fee. And with that comes just better service. We can model different scenarios out, but you guys, and you have access, then obviously if you're in like a Novitas or First Coast, CGS, the numbers become, surprisingly enticing. The challenge is going to be Noridian, and we're working on some long-term plans, but affecting MAC policy and MAC reimbursement, as you guys are aware, is nothing that happens overnight. So it definitely takes some work. So, we are beginning to do some projects and kind of work on things that we'd like to see things move up. For me, a long-term win of fluorescence would be seeing an NCD, right? Just have a known absolute value that we can kind of play to. But this is the reimbursement, and it does afford a couple of things. What you'll see the model looks at is $1,500 a month. It is very easy, even at the lower numbers. So we talked about the efficiency. There's significant time savings. The audit documentation. So really, the accounts using Swift are in such a better position from an audit defense perspective. And then the reimbursement just allows them to effectively get the system at no cost, and it becomes a revenue source for them as well. So kind of quick on the reimbursements. I don't know if I don't see any questions popping up, and happy to kind of talk through. Or any questions in general. We can kind of cover a variety of topics.
We did have one that came across in the chat a little earlier asking about how long it takes for a provider to complete all the fields when they're walking through and answering those questions on the patient.
Depends on the provider, but I think the average that we see is in that kind of like 5 to 7 minute range. So it's not long. As they're first using the system, again, any change, if they're used to literally going through a chart note, sometimes there's still people writing things down or kind of scanning in. So there's a little bit of an adjustment period, but within a week or so or less, sometimes it just depends on their patient flow, but it should be more than like 3 to 5 minutes.
Perfect.
And again, this is going to be the same charting for every provider in the account. So for them, it's that consistency. So if there's questions, if they see back to the dashboards, right? If there's variability or variances, now it really comes down to, okay, is it a different provider? Is it a different product? What's the mix? Is the patient doing something different, right? So now we know that, the variability, human variance is kind of been removed to a degree because we're providing a tool that, kind of takes that lowest performer and brings everybody up. So everyone's operating at the same level because that consistency, and then the SOAP note building chart consistency really gives them, okay, it's what, it makes it very easy for a clinician to begin seeing where the issues, opportunities are. I equate that to, really, value-based care, kind of that big term that means a lot of things to a lot of people. But what it means is I've got a system that I can scale this to an enterprise-wide solution, right? I've got large hospitals that we work with in the post-acute where we're giving them value-based care, the efficiencies, the time savings, the consistency. They're measuring savings in $3 million if they're a 300-bed hospital using this. That same level of value-based care I'm bringing to an individual provider. Look, here's where your variables are. Now you can really quickly see where are your stalled wounds. That's where you want to spend your time. If you're a multi-provider solution, if you've got different levels of performance and expertise. So if I've got different levels of clinicians that are practicing, or I've got my A team and my B team, now I can very quickly see, okay, really within seconds, where's my stalled wounds? Where are the problem patients? That's where I want to spend my higher dollars. So I'm going to spend more money on them, and I can send maybe a different provider type to these other patients. So again, it gives me a chance to spend my money a little bit better. One of the benefits of Swift, because I know we kind of jumped out of the presentation, jumped into the demo. One of the benefits of Swift is we show a 35% accelerated wound healing rate in accounts that use us, and we have papers on that. I don't touch the wound. I am not a biologic. I am not a wound closure device. I'm not a debridement solution. I'm giving you the information to be more responsive and take care of your patients faster, is kind of how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Speed to insight to know where you've got the problems. Awesome. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. I think we covered it. This was really, really good. Scott, thank you so much.
Anytime.
We do have sales resources that we've downloaded from you that are in our portal. So all of the reps have access to that in Venture One View. Some of the marketing material and stuff that you've shared with us. So please utilize that, reps, and let your RMs and ASDs know if you guys have questions or need additional information, and we will pass it on to you, Scott.
Yeah. And do they have the scheduling link, or I can resend that to you, Bailey, or how do we want to?
I have it, and the area sales directors have it as well.
Okay.
So that if a rep reach out to them, or that they've usually been coming to me as well, so I can help give them that link, facilitate a demo. So
yeah. So just for everybody listening, right, the way we want to handle, I mean, again, we're here to support. So this truly is a partnership. So as you are, having conversations with your accounts, when they're, they get to the point of, yeah, I'd love to see a demo. We're not just going to thrust you out there, go figure it out. Hey, you had training from Scott. You've got a link on the website. So, reach out to whatever the sales structure that, that you're getting from Bailey and Matt, but we've got, scheduling links. So it's going to reach into our calendar, just give them options, days, times, what's available. There is no need for coordination. Can I do this? Can I do that? You don't need to give us any information. Book it. We're going to show up. You guys have visibility. I expect the reps to be there. You're always welcome to be there. And we're going to do a demo, right? We'll walk through the demo with the account. We're going to answer their questions. And then the goal will be moving them to that prospect phase, right? Putting a proposal together. That's where the partnership is maybe a little bit different from the other products, because this is a HIPAA compliant. We're setting up databases. So we're going to write the agreement with the account, but we're always going to keep sales in the loop, right? So when we're doing onboarding, you would be aware some calls you might want to be on, some calls you may opt not to as you get comfortable and go through the process, but you'll always be aware. And then when the account's going live, because we're gonna be like, yeah, how'd it go? How'd the first patient go? So it'll definitely be a partnership, but just know that, it's a 50-50 partnership. We're not just going to thrust you out there, and when they're running, we're not backing out. We're going to be engaged with the account throughout, just maintaining the software, keeping things going, right? We're finding out what's going on.
Yep. Looks like we got one more question in the chat. Yep. So is the monthly price per hardware unit or per account? If they have 4 providers, how does that work?
So it's per device, which generally is per provider. So, think of it that way, because the device from a login perspective, if they got, and I'm going to think how to answer this, right? So as a sales rep, you want to send the right service for your account, but it's also how do you get the revenue that's going to hit your tiers? So if I've got a 4 provider practice and they have all 4 providers that they are seeing different patients in different areas, they're mobile, it would make sense for them to have 4 different, Ray devices. If they've got 4 providers, but only 2 of them are actually out there really doing it, then maybe they just need 2. So we can do a hybrid blend of maybe a software only. Software, you can do everything except thermal and spectral. So it changes their workflow. It will change kind of what information they're getting. But if they don't need everyone to do that, but each device, it's just the way the system is set up. It's easier, because it's tied to a user. So from a login, because now we're getting into their single sign-on and kind of how we're pushing things digitally. So generally speaking, it is a provider that would be a Ray. Think of the Ray as a person. But if you've got accounts that we can get creative, but it would affect their workflow. So trying to think about what's going to be efficient for them so they can maximize their patient flow.
Perfect. There was another question about EHR integration, and that reminded me there was one at the very beginning that asked specifically about eClinicalWorks. So if
we do not integrate with eClinicalWorks. So we integrate, and when we say integrate, that could mean a couple of things. So I integrate fully with IntelliCure and with Advanced MD. And what that means is they can actually, use the IntelliCure interface and see all the Swift data. We're pushing things back and forth. We operate kind of there's an ADT PDF. This will get a little technical. You saw like the export PDF of the patient feature. So we can have what we would call a export ADT. So, we're receiving information from the EHR. So they're exporting from the EHR, pushing it into us. It's more semi-automatic, right? Then when they can do a bulk export of Swift created data and then import it into the EHR. We can, as you're growing and you get accounts, I mean, we're hearing about different accounts using different EHRs, and then we have to prioritize which ones we integrate with. For the accounts, there's going to be a cost, right? Because it's pretty significant lift for us to build an integration in, but it requires the EHR to allow us to do that as well. And the EHR is likely also going to be making changes. So for the accounts, to create an integration, it gets pretty costly. And it's absolutely something, if we start seeing a lot of I forget the one EHR, that's one, I've heard it once or twice, just not a lot. but we're looking at doing probably an integration per quarter is the goal. But we're hitting multiple market segments. So, I mean, we're working with Cerner right now, and that's a big one for some of the hospitals and some of our global. But we've got about 3 that we're looking at that are more in the mobile environments. Just which one's next? Where do we see the need for it, so we don't integrate with one that none of you guys are selling into, and it doesn't help anybody. All my answers seem to be lengthy, Bailey, so I'm trying to get in the weeds, but yeah.
That's okay. I think you answered it. So yeah, there was a question about a multi-provider practice. If they wanted to share a device, technically they could. It just may make the workflows a little more challenging.
Yeah, the log in, log out might be a little bit different. But again, let's have those conversations. What I don't want to ever stop us from moving forward is price. So if there's concern about that, what does that look like? If it's a larger provider group, this is, I equate this as my MSRP, right? This is one device, MSRP. We start getting multiple groups, that's going to be a different conversation. But really understanding what their workflow needs, because if they're in a different MAC, so we can definitely get creative where it makes sense with venture of what that's going to look like.
Perfect. All right. Well, we are at time. I want to be respectful of everybody that joined. Thank you so much. If you have any other questions, reach out and we will get them answered for you ASAP.
I appreciate it. Hey, thanks, Bailey, for the opportunity. Anytime, anything you guys need, just reach out.
Will do. Thanks, everyone. Bye.